Mr. X, what's going on with the shirt? Well, recently I did a vlog on how I would like to be a werewolf. So I found some guy online. It only cost me $10,000 and I'm just momentarily waiting for my transformation to happen. I'm kind of nervous and excited at the same time. To give back to you guys, the Extreme Channel is giving away this giant Goro statue from PCS for our 20,000 sub giveaway. If you want to know how to win this, I'll tell you a little bit later in this video. Hey guys, I have a highly anticipated statue sitting in front of me. That's right, this is a werewolf or a Lycan or a lycanthrope. This is from a company called Dream Figures, which is a fairly new company. They came out last year and they came out with this monster line. The first piece they ever made was this mummy statue right here, and in my opinion, it's pretty badass. It's actually one of my favorite horror type statues that I have. And I'm also a huge fan of werewolves. I've been a huge fan since I was young. I remember seeing movies like Teen Wolf where it was kind of fun and play-loving, and then awesome horror movies like The Howling and Silver Bullet, and that was all before I was 7 years old. True story. So I believe this is actually the 4th or 5th werewolf statue that I actually own, and I have another one sitting in the garage that I need to open up. But this is clearly the most dynamic werewolf statue that I own or that I've ever seen. There is so much going on to this piece. And I really had a big question mark whether I wanted to buy this or not for quite a few reasons. One, due to the massive size. Two, some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about in the review today. But I went ahead, I bit the bullet, I bought it for you guys because I know a lot of you are curious on will this be as good as the Mummy? Well, I sacrificed for you and went ahead and bought it. Make sure that's the same story you have because Mrs. X was not too happy about this, especially how bloody and gory it is. Now, there is a little bit of background about this particular piece, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the design piece, because they included a booklet with a little bit of backstory. But if you're from another planet, werewolves are shapeshifters, are human beings that can turn into a wolf-like creature, and generally those wolf-like creatures don't really have a human mind, and they like to maim and kill. They can only be killed, for the most part, with silver bullets, sometimes fire. That's why it would be so badass to be one. I mean, who's carrying around silver bullets? I couldn't be stopped. But there's a brief summary of Lycans for you. All right, so let's kick off the review as we always do, and we're going to start with concept of this piece, and this is where it's just nuts. Now, this isn't just a werewolf on a simple base. This is an incredibly elaborate base. It has a werewolf that has killed people and tons of stuff going on. So let's start at that base. Now, with this base, this is assumably what you would think is maybe a cemetery. There's some bricklayering here, tons of trees and ivy and moss and some water. You actually see a broken tombstone. You see body parts laying everywhere. So there are two people he's killed here. One looks like an innocent victim, and we'll kind of talk about why in the paint and sculpt. The other one looks more like a soldier, and it's perhaps that soldier that shot them all up. You have 3 or 4 different trees kind of giving you that woody effect here. And this werewolf is standing on his hind legs. Like many werewolves, it has very elongated appendages. You see a dead body in the back that's been ripped open. He's sitting there very fierce. Not only very fierce and large, but he is holding one of his victims up, and presumably this was the soldier. Not only is he holding him up, but this guy has had his legs and feet and arm and hand all cut off. You see some arrows and some cuts in the werewolf, so they definitely did some damage, but they did not faze him. So this really tells the story, much like their mummy statue, and I assume much like their future pieces they're going to have, because there's some stuff we're going to show that they teased in the book. So I love the concept of this. It really tells a story. Despite the fact there is so much going on in this piece, your eyes are still instantly drawn to the Lycan or the werewolf because of his size, because of his presence, and he's done really well. So I'm a big fan. It's very different than the other werewolf pieces I have. I give it a 5 out of 5 on the concept. I could definitely see how some people would say there's too much going on for them, but I quite like it. Now, design on this piece is absolutely crazy. So crazy that the assembly actually took me over an hour, and I had the lights on, I had the camera going, but I failed to hit the record button. So the design section here is going to be a little bit different than usual. So here are the 2 large boxes that it came in. We were actually really worried because one had a horrible rattling sound. Thankfully, it was on the inside of the base. Now, they did have an art box. Not only did each of them have an art box, but there was tons of information on that art box in multiple different languages, and a lot of it is stuff that is actually featured in the booklet that we're going to look at as well. They always make a certificate of authenticity on the standard white foam with straps. So you can see right here, it talks about it's a 1/4 Lycan that has a lot of special attributes, made out of resin, hand painted. So the first box had this layer right here, tons and tons of different pieces. I want to speculate there was probably over 50 different pieces. Now here is the booklet. The booklet not only had a lot of information about the people who designed the product, but it had an assembly guide that really wasn't the best that I didn't use. This really talks about Dream Figures and how they want to create monsters and some of the things that they go out of their way to do a high quality product. Here's a little bit about the Lycan itself. You can pause and read that if you so desire. And here's a teaser of their next product. All right, let's get the dimensions on him. Now, very difficult because there's so much twisting around, so I'll try and get the absolute widest point. Is probably a little bit over 28 inches. Wow. The deepest point, probably that tree on the other side, actually. Let me try doing it from over here.
That's what she said.
I'm going to say 26 inches, and then the tallest point is one of those arrows. I think that's right at 28 inches, if I'm not mistaken, which obviously you can remove, as one just fell down. Yeah, right at 28 inches for that. Now, one thing with all those different pieces, there are some noticeable seam lines, mostly on the fingers of the werewolf, because those are actually separate pieces. So here's a picture of the seam lines right here. However, I think it's incredibly creative how it looks like he's holding him by his head. Now, the way they did that, there's actually a very long metal pin sticking out of the palm of his hand that goes into the head. The other seam lines are on the trees where the branches go in. Now, thankfully, most of these are not from the front, and I'm going to put him in a Max 70 Maji case, so you won't really see those. Now, this is supposed to be 1/4 scale, and I think it's done well. I really like that the werewolf is much bigger than normal, because typically you see that in the transformation. However, one other thing I want to talk about on design, is there too much going on? You know, during the concept, I said it wasn't too much, but when you really look at all of this stuff, if it's not a centerpiece, then you're going to miss it. So they didn't need to do this. So I think that's both good and bad. Now, a few of the arrows, the tips had broken off, which is not a big deal, because remember I said that when it was delivered, it was shaking, and it was actually the inside of the base, so that wasn't a big deal. And I've still got them to stick in the werewolf or into the trees where the tips are broken off. Not really a huge deal. There are no switch outs, nor do I think there needs to be. With one exception, if you don't like really bloody stuff, I think they should have made it options that you could remove the torn up humans and maybe put some type of rock or something, or a switch out hand so he doesn't have that pin sticking out. But granted, they didn't make a large edition size of this, which we'll talk about when we get to the value. So design, once again, we're at those crossroads where they tried to go really elaborate with tons of stuff going on. So you certainly get points for that, but I also think it hurts the statue a little bit. So design, I think it's a 3 out of 5, which is a good score. Now we're going to dive into the paint and sculpt, and I think the mummy is better. That is when you talk about the statue as a whole. I think the Lycan is fantastic. Some opportunities on the base we'll look at. There's so much going on this piece, so it's going to be difficult to highlight everything, but starting with the base here, I think the base is probably the weakest part. And part of it is the colors on it. Now, it's not your traditional, green moss that they went for, or the stone steps, or even some of the brown on the trees. However, I think a lot of the intention behind that was to not give it that true bright green or bright brown that you would have, and it makes it a little bit darker, and that was really the goal of the piece. So I'm not a huge fan of that, and even when you look at some of the sculpt on it, it gives you not necessarily a realistic feel that you see sometimes, for example, on the trees, the grain in the wood, or the vines growing around it. It's, I don't want to say plasticky effect, but it is there. Now, looking at the concrete, you see a lot of the same. The rocks jutting out here, nothing very special. Now, something to keep in mind with this piece, with everything that's going on, that's a very secondary or even tertiary thing that you're looking at. There are aspects to the base I do appreciate. The clear resin effect for the muddled water, the broken tombstone, and the leaves in it. They look like real leaves. Fantastic job with that. But throughout the rest of the base, before we get to the body parts, you see a lot of that overgrown ivy. And there's, like, even down here, some of the tree coming out really wasn't needed at all. Some of these white spots are still the foam that I need to clean off. And then here's some shots of the green. So a little bit of a miss, and you know what's interesting is the production photos of this were always really dark, because I think that's where the setting is really meant to be in, or the statue is meant to be in. And if you put it in a dark setting with really vibrant colors on the base, it just wouldn't look good. So let's move on to the body parts on the base. I like the blood effect a lot. You're gonna see some blood on the bodies he's killing and on the werewolf himself. And again, you'll see a little bit more of the foam I need to get off. But they did a fantastic job. I like the texturing they gave on the clothing of the human beings. Where it's even cut off, you can see the bones on the inside. Great job. On the body parts in general, looks just like my freezer. And then moving around here, here's this guy's arm that fell off, or actually this is the guy he's holding. Now there's not as much detail on the portrait of this guy in the back, and I'm okay with that because it's looking down. You can barely even see it, but I think it's kind of smart. You can see some of the blue veins in here. I don't like how it was applied with the paint. It almost looks like there's not enough detail. Now keep in mind, especially where I'm gonna display this, you're not even gonna see this guy because he's way in the back. And then the inside where his guts are ripped out, again, great blood effect, his intestines running down, where his leg is cut off. And I think the blood pattern beneath of all the areas that were slaughtered and cut off looks great. It tells a real good story. Blood does flow that way. So now let's move to the guy he's holding. I like the armor on him. It gives you kind of a vibe that, hey, this is the guy that actually shot the arrows that we'll look at in a second. He came to fight and he didn't do so well. A lot of cool detail in here on his uniform. And then again, great blood splatter. You can see the bone once again. In his portrait, same thing, not really a lot of detail, but you're not really staring at that. This piece isn't about this. This is kind of a secondary afterthought. And then we move on to the Lycan, or the werewolf, which is the star of the show. And even, you know, stepping back, that's instantly what you're drawn to. I like it a lot. I like the musculature. He has those, hind legs, kind of skinny in the back, very reminiscent of American Werewolf in London, but kind of their own twist on it. Sculpted fur is always hard to do, and there's really not a lot. They made more of a skin effect, and you don't really think about it when you're just looking at it in general. And there's black and brown spotting throughout him. His nails, there's some more white I need to get out, but his nails, nice long black claw marks. And then kind of this mane of sculpted fur that looks really good. And I think if they went throughout the entire body with this type of fur, like I do on some of my other werewolf statues, it wouldn't have worked. They do add some like on his elbows, and then even all the way down to his little tail in the back. But I like it. I like kind of the rough texture on the skin. The anatomy is good. You can see some of the rib anatomy right there. And then we'll get to the cuts and the arrows in a second. Very elongated features, which I like. This also reminds me a little bit of the werewolf in Harry Potter. But the arrows look good. The feathers, not a ton of detail in there. Focus on there. But I like how moving into the Lycan, you do have the blood splatter, and he has these scrapes, which you can assume is from the fight with the humans. It's fresh blood. Now, typically werewolves heal pretty quick, but again, great job with the blood effect coming down. And then we'll move to the real star of the show, his portrait. I like the pointy ears. Now with his eyes, one thing that I noticed is the orange and red is kind of speckled on there, and I think that's very intentional. Kind of these beady eyes. You see some white. It looks a little messy, but I think it's almost intentional. But the mouth, my favorite part. The blood effect, the drool effect, the fangs, the gums. see some of that clear resin drool effect right there. Really cool. Now, while I think there's definitely some detail opportunities in this piece, especially compared to their mummy, when you take a step back from it and look at it for what it is and everything that's going on, I'm a big fan. All right, so starting with paint. If it was just on the Lycan, I would probably give it a 4 out of 5. When you include the base, other than the blood effect, I think it drops down to a 3 out of 5 on the paint. So kind of take that for what you will. Obviously, the werewolf is the most important part, and that's a 4 out of 5, where I'd rate the base a 3 out of 5. And like I said, I think some of the things were intentionally done to make it almost a darker piece. Now, sculpt, I love the ripped up body. I love the armor. I'm not a huge fan of the portraits on the humans or some of the lack of texture they used on the base and some of the missing grain in the tree. But otherwise, everything's good. And I kind of fall in the same score. I think the werewolf and a lot of the bloody pieces are a 4 out of 5, but the base would be a 3 out of 5. Now keep in mind, 3 is what you expect for the money you pay for it, which is a great segue. This was $1,200 plus a pretty hefty shipping price. Depending where you get this shipped, those 2 huge boxes cost quite a bit. I mean, you're talking $200 to $400 extra dollars. So you're about $1,500 all into this. They made 100 of these. So it's a little bit more expensive than the mummy statue. There's definitely a lot more going on. Now, while this piece isn't licensed, I don't believe there's actually a license you have to pay because Werewolf or Lycan is not trademarked. This is kind of their own concept. So 100 edition size, very, very low. $1,500, which is about the price of 2 normal 1/4 scale pieces. But you have 3 characters in here and a huge elaborate base. I think the value is pretty good. I think it's a 4 out of 5 on this piece. It's very unique. There's nothing out there on the market like this. So does this have the X factor? Now, if you're new to the channel, X factor isn't do the cumulative scores of all the other categories average a 5 out of 5. Is this an amazingly badass piece you're instantly drawn to? If you don't like blood, you won't like this statue. If you like bloody statues like I do, then yes, this does have the X factor in my opinion. It's a 5 out of 5 in regards to that. I don't know if it's my favorite werewolf statue, especially because I haven't opened up an ECC one that's in the garage, but definitely a contender for sure. To win this Goro statue, first thing you got to do is make sure you've liked this video, you've actually subscribed to the channel, and you've hit that bell notification. Second thing is leave a comment below, and make sure it's a witty, entertaining, or funny comment. Because when we hit 20,000 subscribers, I'm going to pick a random video, and the comment that has the most likes on it will be the winner of this Goro statue. So make sure your comment is entertaining to others and entertaining to Mr. X. Because if I like it, I'm actually going to pin it to the tops to help you get more likes. So if you were on the fence for this, make sure to go ahead and pick it up. They only have a digit. So if you're on the fence for this, make sure to pick it up. They still have them at Sideshow's website, I believe, as of filming this review. Because once they're gone, I don't think people will reship these. So make sure hashtag no regrets. And don't regret not giving me a like on the way out or dropping a comment or not subscribing to me because you might miss an awesome video tomorrow. Really appreciate you guys tuning in.